Hello and welcome into this first edition of High School Roundup for the 2015 Whippeal football season. I'm Zach Proswa. Joining me today, Matt Hagee, and for his first time ever on High School Roundup, Anthony D'Agostino, replacing our graduated Cody Jeanette. If you're watching Cody, shout out to you wherever you're at. But guys, we're finally back here in the High School Roundup set. It's been a year. Last thing we did was look at the championship games of the playoffs from a year ago. How good does it feel to finally be back here in studio and watching some Whippeal football?
Oh, it's wonderful, Zach. High school football is one of my favorite times of the year, being with you guys, calling games. We had a great first weekend, a lot of good games, and plus some very big upsets as well.
Yeah, definitely. This is my first time being on the set of High School Roundup. I've seen it before on television, on CUTV. I loved when you guys did it with Cody Jeanette, and I'm very honored to be on the set of High School Roundup. Big honor for me. And as Matt said, had some great high school football in the Whippeal this past week.
Yeah, great games. A couple that we were at, a couple that we were not at, but we're still following along with because they were such big matchups. And actually, Matt, you're going to have our first set of highlights for the 2015 season, our CUTV Game of the Week. We had the honor and privilege to be able to look at the first game at Bellvue's newly renovated Golden Turf. If you haven't seen it yet, you're going to see it in these highlights. It's amazing what it looks like being in person in a Golden Turf field. And Matt, why don't you go ahead and kick off the highlights between BVA and the Trinity Hillers?
Well, both of you guys called it a great game. This was a fun game. We had a little lightning delay at first, but nonetheless, when this game got started, it was a pretty good one and a defensive slugfest, which was something different from the past year. And we're going to kick it off right here. Derek Verclearen, 37-yard field goal in the first quarter, and Bellvue took the lead 3-0 early on. But Trinity, upset-minded, they come right back. This is Saul Wells, 3-yard run for the touchdown. Better call Saul when they need touchdowns for Trinity. 7-3, and Trinity looking like for the upset early on here. Now Bellvue looking to strike back. This is Luke Durgan over the top, 4th and 1, but he extends the ball, which is a no-no, and Trinity recovers in the end zone for the touchback. And Bellvue looking sloppy early on, but after the turnover, Bellvue comes right back. They go right to their quarterback, Mike Fine, in his first full season starting. Great fake, fakes out the whole defense and runs 12 yards into the end zone, gives Bellvue the lead just before the half. That was a pretty fine looking run. Now, in the fourth quarter here, Trinity looking to tie the game. Sam Trapuzano slips on the new turf there, 41-yard field goal he missed. He had the distance, but you got to believe that slip messed up the whole thing. And then Mike Fine once again puts the game away here late in the fourth quarter, breaking some tackles. A wonderful run to the end zone makes it 17-7. Fine finished with 17 carries for 122 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Bellvue gets the opening day win over the Trinity Hillers, 17-7 in the Big Ten Conference.
And that was a great game, and you mentioned, the new turf. There was a lot of slips and falls. Anthony, when you and I were calling the game, there was a receiver slipped and fell twice in the same spot on 2 different series of the game. How do you think that affected the game overall?
Well, it really affected the game in the fact that they went more to a running game. They didn't pass the ball as much because when they passed it, their receivers were slipping around the same spot of the field. It was usually the far corner towards the end zone, around the 10, 20-yard lines where they were really slipping and falling. You even saw the kicker slip and fall. And it was really because of the new turf and the rain. And you have to have certain cleats to be able to do those special pivots. Without certain cleats, you'll slip and fall.
And Trinity's coach had some very strong words about the turf when he talked to the Observer reporter that was at the game, and he said, "This isn't a football field. This is ridiculous." And everyone was slipping, and so, but maybe some new kinks for the turf, but I liked it. When we got there, I was like, whoa, this is awesome. This is better than Eastern Washington's red turf.
Yeah, in pictures before the game, it was either people liked it or didn't like it. When I got there in person, it wasn't actually that bad. So we're going to continue on now with some other scores in AAA. Now the Big Ten Conference. It was the Big Nine last year, but they added Yawk into the Whippeal AAA Big Nine Conference. So they're the Big Ten now. So we'll go ahead and look at some of the other scores from around that conference. And you'll see here in just a second, Ringgold over TJ. Huge upset. Matt, you'll talk about that in a second. And West Mifflin over Uniontown could have been an upset. Matt, Ringgold over TJ, though.
What unbelievable story for Ringgold. Shout out to them. First time since 2003, Ringgold has knocked off Thomas Jefferson. They haven't played every single year, so that was the last 8 meetings. The magnitude of this game, because Thomas Jefferson does not lose in the Big 9/Big 10 conference. That was their first conference loss since October 28, 2011 at West Mifflin. I was a freshman here at Cal, and now I'm a senior. And in this game, Ringgold, they were down 20-8. We're all thinking, oh, looks like TJ's going to pull away from this one after Ringgold took the lead early. Shakar Berry, 23 carries, 167 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and a receiving touchdown. He had the go-ahead touchdown in the fourth quarter, but they're doing just fine without Nico Law.
Yeah, and Anthony, that West Mifflin Uniontown game, really close. A lot of people thought West Mifflin would run away with it.
Yeah, again, West Mifflin thought they would run away with it, but Uniontown, only 7 points, and definitely want to look for them to score some more points against some other Whipple teams.
Yeah, they went winless last year, so we'll see if they improve any this year. We'll move on. The other making their debut in the Big Ten Conference is York. They ended up getting the 44-20 win over Albert Gallatin, and Matt, great entrance into them for the conference.
Yeah, and it's always tough to adjust to the teams, but York's a pretty local team in that area, so they're very familiar with some of the teams like Bellvue. They used 32 points in the second half to pull away from Albert Gallatin, who finished with no wins last season. Eric Borkovich, 3 touchdowns away. He scored for York, and a good start for them in the new conference.
And they'll move on to the there actually is no non-conference matchup in the Big Ten because there's 10 teams. We'll move on to the Big Ten standings, and we didn't see the Laurel Highlands score, but you could see that they won. We'll get that when we look at our South Union Township highlights. But Anthony, one team right now that kind of stands out to you, I know it's week 1, but a team that stands out either top or bottom that you think could have a big or disappointing season.
Well, Laurel Highlands, actually, for me, last year they didn't finish as great a season as they wanted. But starting off 1-0 and really taking it to Elizabeth Ford, as you're going to see in the highlights, you'll see in the beginning highlight, there's an opening kickoff return for a touchdown. Laurel Highlands took that momentum and ran with it the entire game. And to me, I think they have a shot at really doing well in the postseason if they keep up the momentum going forward.
I mean, you got to look at Ringgold. I mean, for the past couple of years, Ringgold started that game against Thomas Jefferson. They've had high hopes to win that conference, but they've always been throttled by the Jaguars. They finally get that monkey off their back. And Shakar Berry, I read some press game words. He wants a championship. That team wants a championship, and this year they mean business. So Monongahela should be very excited for the Rams this season.
And they are clearly the favorite now, having that advantage over TJ. Even if they finish with the same record, Ringgold has the advantage. Now we'll move on to Quad A in the Foothills Conference. Some big action there. You have McKeesport over Connellsville, 49-7, and Norwin over Latrobe, 31-0. Cody Jennett, your former school, big win there. And then we'll move on to some of the other scores in the conference as well. Penn Trafford over Kiski, 52-7. Plum over Hempfield, 38-17. And then the non-conference matchup was Altoona over Butler, 19-17. So you look at the standings, and guys, again, one team that stands out to you with early season success or slight downfall.
Well, how about Norwin picking it up from last year? Norwin had that playoff season and thought maybe that might have been a fluke, but they come right off. They shut out Latrobe, and they got some big games coming up, so we can see if they can prove themselves once again and get a winning season.
And Penn Trafford definitely doing very well, winning 52-7 over Kiski area. They're just a powerhouse team, and looking for them to go really well in the postseason here.
Yeah, we're going to actually see Penn Trafford coming up this week, but before we get to that, we're going to take a small commercial break, and when we come back, we'll have our South Union Township highlights, Laurel Highlands versus Elizabeth Ford, as well as AA and Single A scores and standings, right here on High School Roundup on CUTV.
Catch all the excitement under the Friday night lights with CUTV's High School Football Game of the Week. You have the best seats in the house as the area's longest-running high school football telecast, now in its 29th season, brings you the area's biggest games. Don't forget to watch the replay on CUTV, Sundays at 8 and Thursdays at 5:30. Since 1937, the Student Association Incorporated, known as SAI, has served the Cal U student body by providing activities, programs, and services. Every enrolled student has the ability to take part in over 125 different clubs and organizations. Managing participation in every SAI activity is easy with OrgSync, a powerful tool for staying connected. Located 1 mile from campus, the SAI Farm has 94 acres of meeting and recreational space. SAI, it's your student association.
Don't miss your chance to catch the best pro wrestling on the planet. Ring of Honor returns to the Pittsburgh area at the Convo Center at Cal U, Friday, September 25th at 7:30 p.m. with appearances by the Briscoes, Jay Lethal, Adam Cole, and many more. Experience body slamming, super kicking pro wrestling action live. Visit ROHWrestling.com now for tickets and info.
Complete news, entertainment, and sports coverage from around the area, region, and nation is found right here on CUTV News Center every Thursday at 5 p.m. with anchors Jennifer Germano, Zach Prosba, entertainment with Mike Mays, and sports with Matt Hagee. Follow us on YouTube, CUTV News Center, and on Twitter, CUTV_PA, for your complete rebroadcast of your Vulcan sports. News Center airs every Thursday at 5 p.m. on Armstrong and Atlantic Broadband.
And welcome back to High School Roundup, first edition of the 2015 season. Again, I'm Zach Prosper, joined by Matt Hagee and Anthony D'Agostino. And Anthony, it's your time up now, your first set of highlights here in High School Roundup. And we're going to be talking Laurel Highlands versus Elizabeth Forward, our South Union Township game of the week. Why don't you go ahead and kick off the highlights?
Well, Laurel Highlands really took it to Elizabeth Forward. And Jimmy Pierce, you're going to notice he was fantastic this entire game. But it really starts off right here with the opening kickoff. Elizabeth Forward kicking it off to Chad Livingston. He's going to take it forward and going to break a few tackles right there. Finally getting somebody wrapped him up, and then he just gets away. And it's going to be an 87-yard kickoff return for the opening touchdown for Laurel Highlands. Going to miss the kick, though, so it's going to be 6-0. Then Elizabeth Forward, Zach Buddy with the 11-yard run, breaking tackles, diving into the end zone. Great run by Zach Buddy. Elizabeth Forward getting that 2-point conversion, so they're going to be up 8-6. Laurel Highlands, Jimmy Pierce taking it himself, 34-yard run for the touchdown. As I said before, Jimmy Pierce looking fantastic this game. Then you're going to see Elizabeth Forward, Steve Mayernick, going to have breaking a few tackles there, getting around in trouble. 3-yard pass to Nick Wardropper. And then again, Jimmy Pierce taking it himself. He had no business scoring a touchdown here, but he just goes right through the entire defense of Elizabeth Forward. Touchdown, Laurel Highlands. And again, Jimmy Pierce tossing it to Lucas Boyle, the 5-yard run. Great touchdown by Laurel Highlands. Jimmy Pierce passing this time, 22-yard pass to Chad Livingston. A great touchdown pass by the quarterback, Jimmy Pierce. Elizabeth Forward now gets a chance. Hands it off to Zach Buddy for a 5-yard run. Just powers through to the end zone. Then Jimmy Pierce hands it off to Christian Jones. He has no one touching him. Goes right through a wide open hole, and Christian Jones, 72-yard touchdown run for Laurel Highlands. And again for Elizabeth Forward. Gonna hand it off again to Zach Buddy, and Zach Buddy just runs it right through the middle. No one touching him for the touchdown. Last but not least, again, Lucas Boyle with the counter play. 35-yard touchdown run for Laurel Highlands. And Laurel Highlands wins the game 49-28.
And great score there. We'll get into some of the other scores in a second. But Laurel Highlands starting off the year with a win for the second consecutive year. Last year, we thought it was kind of a bit of an upset. This year, Laurel Highlands seems to be a dominant team in the Big Ten Conference and definitely has hopes of making the playoffs.
I'm excited to see this Laurel Highlands team. Jimmy Pierce, this is his last season. A lot of expectations on him. When you got weapons like Chad Livingston and Lucas Boyle, this is a pretty legit offense.
And Anthony, you're going to be our LH expert for the rest of the year on their highlights, so you're going to see a lot of exciting plays, I think, this year. We'll go ahead and move on to AA, though, the Interstate Conference. Some scores here. Burgettstown over Waynesburg, a team that made the playoffs last year, 35-8. And then Mount Pleasant over McGuffey, 30-23. Matt, that was a huge early season matchup, and it took overtime to get there as well.
And it really did. McGuffey rallied on Mount Pleasant. This is a great game, and McGuffey's doing a great job, even though they lost, competing in this conference. But Mount Pleasant looking for a conference title this year. Chris Wagner for the Vikings from 3 yards out to clinch it in overtime, and then after stuffing McGuffey on the first drive. So Mount Pleasant off on the right foot. That was a big gut check game right there and sets Mount Pleasant up for the rest of the season until they face Wash High.
Yeah, and we'll actually be at that game, but we'll get to that a little bit later. And now the next set of scores. Southmoreland over Charleroi, 46-29. Washington over Derry, 48-0. Anthony, a lot of people were high in the Charleroi team this year. Southmoreland, they made a statement winning that big with 17 points and scoring 46.
They really did. They made a huge statement, 46-29. The Scotties used a balanced offensive attack throughout the entire game, with their highest scorer in quarter being 14 points in the last quarter. Andrew Polikovsky finished with 15 carries, for 156 yards, including a 63-yard run.
And that's great. We always see throughout the Whippeal great rushing attacks, and definitely another one right there. And we'll get into the non-conference matchup. Beaver over Brownsville, 35-14. Brownsville with a new head coach this year. I actually think they're going to make some strides, could win a couple games. We're going to have them in our final game of the year. And I think, maybe if things get going right, they could be in a playoff conversation. But we'll get to the standings for now, and we'll see. At the top of the interstate standings, Wash High, Mount Pleasant, always there. But Southmoreland and Burgettstown are with them. Guys, teams that stand out to you, just like we did for the other levels of Whippeal.
I'm going to look at Burgettstown. That was a pretty impressive win over Waynesburg. Waynesburg, you mentioned a playoff team. Burgettstown's got this kid, Jake Shipley, who put on a show, set a single-game record, school record, 182 yards receiving. Burgettstown, they already matched their win total from last year. Does it lead to more wins? Because it looks like at the bottom of the standings, some of these other teams, this is going to be a chance for Burgettstown to maybe move up and have a good season for the first time in a couple of years.
Looking at Charleroi, as you said, 0-1. People really were thinking Charleroi could be that team this year. Charleroi looking to bounce back after that tough loss against Southmoreland.
Yeah, and then you always have to look at Wash High. They're the dominant team. Until someone knocks them off, they're going to be the favorite. We'll go now to Single A, to the Eastern Conference. We have two conferences in Single A, don't forget. Starting with the Eastern Conference, Greensburg Central Catholic over Monessen, 21-0, and Leechburg over Wilkinsburg, 40-14. And Matt, GCC, they got a dynamic new guy who's really going to help that team in that conference this year.
Yeah, they took him right away from Frazier. You might hear this name from last year, L.A. Ross, and this might give Greensburg Central Catholic something to compete with, like against Clareton and Jeanette as well. L.A. Ross, 23 carries, 202 yards, and a touchdown. This was interesting game right here. Greensburg Central Catholic going against Monessen. Monessen new coach Joe Salvino, who is their basketball coach as well. He's been their longtime basketball coach, and Greensburg Central Catholic spoiled it, and now they take their eyes on Beth Center.
And that's going to be a huge game. We'll talk about that later in the show. I guarantee you that. Move on to the rest of the scores in the Eastern Conference. You were going to see Springdale over Sarah Catholic, 34-20, and Jeanette over Riverview. And Anthony, last year, Jeanette, a normal powerhouse. Terrell Pryor went there, for goodness sake. They didn't make the playoffs. So Jeanette has something to prove this year, and a big early season win there.
It really was, and it was led by Kareem Hall, had 135 yards rushing and a touchdown. So looking for him to really keep that momentum going and help the team out, win some more games.
And then the non-conference matchup between the Eastern Conference and TriCounty South, Clareton establishing their dominance yet again. We were at this game last year at Cal High, and exact same result, 72-0. California, it's not that they're bad by any means at all. Clareton is just that good, and they have every chance to win the state title again this year. We'll look at the Eastern standings, though, and at the top, you actually don't have Clareton because it was a non-conference game. You have Leechburg, Jeanette, Springdale, and GCC. This conference is really top-heavy, but Monessen down there at the bottom. Anthony, I'll start with you, a team that kind of sticks out so far with only one weekend.
Greensburg Central Catholic. When we went to Beth Center last year, I believe Beth Center won that game against Greensburg Central Catholic. It was a very, very close game. So the fact that Greensburg can get up 1-0, right? Standings 1-0, really good. Definitely look to see them take their revenge against Beth Center next week.
And with Clareton, it's like you said with Wash High. Until someone knocks them off, they're the team to beat. They now move Aaron Matthews to quarterback, which is scary enough for what he did at receiver. They didn't have Lamont Wade for this game, and Harrison Dreyer just picked up right where he left off. And also, their head coach was suspended for this game because there were some things going on at the end of the state final loss last year. So Clareton, even with those missing, they picked right off where they left off.
Yeah, I could definitely see them back in the PIAA state game. We'll move on to the Tri-County South, round out all the scores and standings. Bentworth over Carmichael's 34-14, and Beth Center, still the team to beat in the Tri-County South over Mapletown, 48-12. And Matt, one of our mottos last year is, my God, Mapletown. Not a great start for them this year, but Beth Center is so good.
No, and I mean, Anthony Welsh, this is his senior year. He's got a lot to prove because he fumbled and ended Beth Center's season, fumbled in the end zone and lost to Riverside in the first round of playoffs. So he's going to be running with a chip on his shoulder. 240 yards in the first half. If they would have kept him in the whole game, he could have set the Whitfield rushing record. This kid's going to be fun to watch. And also, Frank Drucci, they've been giving him some carries. He was a tight end last season, so look for him. He had 100 yards as well.
Yeah, I was actually at that game doing playoff highlights, and I saw Welsh fumble, and he just kind of laid there for a few minutes. I knew he's going to have a big year for his senior year. Move on to the rest of the scores. You have Fraser over Avella 52-0, and Jeff Morgan over West Green 33-7. Fraser, they are basically 1B in this conference behind Beth Center and Anthony. They had a very dominant win, even slightly better than Beth Center with a big shutout against Avella.
They really did, and they got off to an impressive start on the road in the TriCounty South Conference. Fraser led 42-0 at halftime. Hunter Patterson threw 2 touchdown passes and also scored touchdowns on a 64-yard punt return and a 57-yard run. Fraser outgained the Eagles 294-68. Patterson completed 4 of 5 pass attempts for 107 yards. Great win by Fraser over Avella.
And then we'll quickly look at the standings. And I'm going to take this one myself, the team that stands out. I'm going to go with Fraser. I think this could be the year that they knock off Beth Center. We're going to be at that game at Beth Center later on this year. Until it happens, though, like we've been saying, you never know. So we're going to take one final commercial break. When we come back, we'll have our upcoming schedules, our weekly pick'em, and, of course, the top 3 plays from this past week. If you stay tuned right here on High School Roundup on CUTV.
Save preset 1 for Cal U's best music. More music in the car. More music in the door. More music everywhere. This is 91.9 WCAL Power 92. The home of the Vulcan Nation. Playing Cal U's best music. 91.9 WCAL. WCAL Power 92.
First published in the 1880s, the California Times is the oldest student media at California University. Circulating 3,000 issues weekly on campus and in the surrounding community, the Times' mission is to deliver fair and balanced news to the student population of California University. All students are welcome to be a part of the California Times. Our offices are located in the Natali Student Union. Keep up to date with the Times online at www.caltimes.org, Facebook, and follow us on Twitter.
And welcome back. We're in our final segment of High School Roundup, our debut edition for 2015. We're going to go ahead and touch on the upcoming schedules for this week. We'll go each conference, pick out a game that stands out to us. And we're going to start in Quad A, the Foothills Conference. And actually, Matt, Penn Trafford to Connellsville is our game of the week that we're doing this week.
It is, but that's not the game I'm going to focus on. Plum and North Hills is a big non-conference bout. Plum with an impressive win over Hempfield. Plum also making the playoffs last season. Now they switch conferences into a very strong conference with North Hills. North Hills plays North Allegheny and company. Big game right there.
And then we'll go to AAA in the Big Ten. You got to get used to saying that. It's not the Big Nine anymore. Laurel, Highlands, and Trinity will have highlights of that from South Union Township. Anthony, a game that stands out to you, though.
Definitely it's going to be Ringgold at Uniontown. Ringgold going up against Thomas Jefferson before. This is really big for Ringgold to win this game against Uniontown.
Yeah, it's kind of a can you back up what you've done? And Uniontown did hold West Mifflin close, so perfect pick there. And then going to AA in the Interstate Conference, I'm going to look at Charleroi and McGuffey. McGuffey, after an early season kind of big loss to Mount Pleasant in overtime, and Charleroi, a lot of people had high hopes for them. Do they rebound? As well, does McGuffey rebound? That's going to be a great matchup. I think, McGuffey is definitely the favorite team in there, but Charleroi could make some noise. As we'll go down to the Eastern Conference, and I will say here, don't pick BCGCC because we'll touch on that in the next one. But Anthony, a game here that sticks out to you besides BCGCC?
It's definitely going to be Sierra Catholic at Jeanette. Jeanette coming away with that big win before. Going to have to back that up against Sierra Catholic. And
then into the TriCounty South. I might as well just talk about it anyways, Matt. Beth Center and Greensburg Central Catholic.
What a game we had last year. From the vault were the unbelievable back-and-forth game. Greensburg Central Catholic Revenge is on their mind, and now with their new weapon, L.A. Ross, he's had some experience against Beth Center. He had a big game against Beth Center. He was with Frazier. Might be enough to put GCC over the top here.
And we'll see as we get into our weekly picks. I'll quickly run down them. Our standings, there's only 4 of it this year. I felt really bad eliminating some names like Cody Jeanette and the ladies of CUTV as well in there. And now we'll go into our games this week and have 5 games. The picks, Penn Trafford to Connellsville. Majority Penn Trafford. Anthony, the only one picking Connellsville. We told you that was a bold selection. We'll see if it pans out for you. As we go into the next game, you will have, you will see in the next game, Bell Vernon at Thomas Jefferson. We're all going TJ. Think they're going to rebound from that loss to Ringgold. They don't lose in conference very often, so when they do, they're bound to back it up with a win. And then moving on, I believe the next one we have is Plum at North Hills. I'm the only one going Plum because they had a decent season last year. Everyone else going North Hills. And Anthony, you're kind of going North Hills because your girlfriend's from there, and you were making the comment, I might get slapped if I don't pick them. But hopefully it works out for me in my favor. I'm kind of hoping Plum gets that upset there. And our 4th game, Beaver Falls at Southmoreland. See if Southmoreland can back up their dynamic performance in the first week. We're all going Beaver Falls, though. Kind of a show-me game. Show me something, Southmoreland. Sure. And then our last game, Beth Center at Greensburg Central Catholic. Gary Smith, our director, the only one going with Beth Center. We're all going GCC, kind of a revenge from last year. We were all at that game when we saw Beth Center. It was really close. They got the win, but GCC seems poised to take it away this year. As that'll do it for picks, games from last week and into this week. Now, get to the top 3 plays. And Anthony, you have our first one at number 3.
At number 3, it is going to be Mike Fine for Bell Vernon. Just takes it himself, plows through the defenders. Their great run. It's the clinching run for Bell Vernon for when they win this football game.
And then moving on to number 2, Matt from LH and EF.
Well, Jimmy Pierce right here, he's going to take it himself, go right up the middle. He's going to be stopped for a short gain. Nah, man, he's going right into the end zone for a touchdown. Jimmy Pierce is one of the guys that you're going to see here a lot this season.
And then number 1, the opening kickoff from LH Elizabeth Ford, definitely the play of the week in all of our opinions. A great running start from Livingston, fielding at the 13, then shakes off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 defenders for Elizabeth Ford. A great start. Laurel Highlands, I expect a lot of big things out of them this year. I think last year was kind of a, we're a surprise team. Now it's, can we prove it? And I think they will. Clearly, that's our blue ribbon because it's the first week of the season, and we'll see if it stands up to next week. It's going to be hard to beat that, though, guys. But you know, there's always going to be great plays out there.
Chad Livingston, I mean, bouncing off all these guys. I was digging up these highlights and created the top 3, and you just watch, you're like, whoa, this is going to be tough to beat all season. And we had our top 3 last year. That was won in the playoffs, so it's going to come down the wire for blue ribbon play.
Yeah, well, guys, that's going to do it for High School Roundup for the first week. Any final thoughts before we get into the second week of the Whippeal? Anthony, I'll start with you.
It's, again, very honored to be here on this show today. Thought it went really well, and I'm excited for this week's football game on Friday, game of the week for CUTV and Laurel Highlands.
And Penn Trafford, 1 win away, got knocked off by Pittsburgh Central Catholic 2 straight years, so this is going to be a lot of fun. We don't get to see Penn Trafford a lot, so it would be fun to see a new team on our game of the week.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Penn Trafford Connellsville is the CUTV game of the week. That's on Friday. As well as Friday, South Union Township will have coverage of Laurel Highlands versus Trinity. So second straight week, we're going to be seeing Trinity. For Anthony D'Agostino, Matt Hagee, our director Gary Smith, and everyone in the crew working behind the scenes, I'm Zach Proswa. Thank you for watching, and make sure you stay tuned in to High School Roundup all season long here on CUTV.